Join us as we discuss Final Fantasy VI on the next episode of the Time Hop Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Time Hop Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Lozada. I'm joined with Tim Ronan.
Hello.
In case you don't know, the Time Hop Podcast is a podcast that plays games of the past to let you know if they're worth playing today. Today's episode is all about Final Fantasy VI, or known in North America as Final Fantasy 3. But before we get into Final Fantasy 6/3, Tim, how you doing this week?
Well, actually getting back into Final Fantasy 3 slash...
Oh!
I swapped it on you. No, I forgot that was a thing. It's like, that's not confusing at all.
And
It's
you
like,
know,
yeah, but I was watching some like gameplay stuff of it, and they were actually talking about that. I was like, oh yeah, so one came out in Japan, we got one, but then we didn't get two,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 and 3 or some. See, I'm already confused.
Yeah,
we didn't get like these versions.
We didn't get.
It's
2
like,
and
oh yeah,
3,
6 is, yeah.
and then we got 4, and then we didn't get 5, and then we got 6. So for us, it's 3.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like just. I mean, I guess it makes sense because like, I guess if you jumped from like 1 to 6 or whatever, it's like it'd be like confusing to people. But
Right.
in one sense, I almost wish that they would have just kept it, because have they since released? Haven't they since released like 2 and 3 and whatever?
Yeah, they're
Like
all out.
Yeah. So then actually, what happened? What happened to the ones we didn't get that we now have? Are those named properly, or are those named differently?
Yeah, those are named properly. Those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it wasn't until 7 that they all started coming to North America. I mean, until 6
Okay.
that they all started coming to North America, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, it kind of makes sense, but it's a little screwy. But all right, Japan.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like, I guess, I mean, it also speaks to how, like, the industry has kind of become much more vernacular. Like, I mean, this came out in the 90s, so, like, seeing it kind of become much more of a worldly kind of industry, it's very apparent. I think at the turn of the century, how, like, we started getting more worldwide releases, and like you see like Final Fantasy VI, and I'll touch on this later, but it released in April 1994, and then it released in October in North America the same year. But then you see like Final Fantasy VII and 8 and 9, like though that gap is like it's closed a lot more. It's closed more and more as the series goes on. And to the point where now with Final Fantasy 15, it's a simultaneous worldwide release. And the same thing with other Square Enix games like Kingdom Hearts 3 and such. So it really speaks to kind of the industry. I think not so much about the Final Fantasy series per se, because we have to kind of put things in perspective. Like, I guess if you were a NES and SNES console owner in the time, and you would be looking for 4, 5, or 6, or actually 2, 3, and 5, but you wouldn't find them, so you would have to kind of it would be very confusing for you at the time. And then when those games started releasing worldwide, okay, so then you had to readjust. I think of it as kind of like Star Wars, how it was always known as episodes one, two, three. You know, like A New Hope
Oh,
and
yeah.
Return, New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That was just the trilogy, right? That was one, two, three. But now it's like that's actually four, five, six, right?
Why? Why was it done like that?
Because George Lucas is weird. I don't know.
Was like, was it just like, haha, it's like later part of a story, I guess, or was he like planning to do the prequels, or was it just like, what even is that?
I I think that he always planned to do three trilogies. I think, from my understanding, was that he like the meat of it was what he originally created, like meat, quote unquote, and then like the meat of the Skywalker saga, and then episodes one, two, three were just supposed to be like, oh, this is what's leading up to the Skywalker saga that happened 2, 3 decades ago, and then the new trilogy is just Disney trying to make money. So off the Star Wars name. So at least that's the way I look at it, because it really doesn't really have anything to do with Skywalker per se.
He's in he appears in them. It's totally about him,
Well,
and then things happen.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. This is kind of spoilery, but like it is kind of like his family, like his extended family. I mean, Luke Skywalker's extended family. So like, I guess, yeah, but the focus isn't so much on the Skywalker name so much as it is kind of like the Force and this mysterious
Yeah,
entity that's all around the universe. I don't know. It's a little more kind of whereas like the prequels was about Anakin, and raising Anakin. This
and
is
all
much,
that
yeah, and all that jazz.
high ground and so forth.
Right. This isn't about like the new trilogy isn't about uh Luke's like retirement or something. It's much more about Rey and Finn and all these Wumbo characters that nobody really gives a shit about. But at least in my opinion, I should say that I don't care about. But whatever. I'll end my opinions there on that trilogy. And also it's not over yet, so you know, I can't really have an opinion until it's all done, right? So yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
Wait,
yeah.
wasn't there last thing about Star Wars, and then we can maybe talk about other things. Um, didn't there was did they drop the new trailer for the ninth one
They did.
like
They did
recently?
actually. The episode 9.
Nine. Yeah.
I was just talking about this. Yeah, episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It's gonna be called.
Right.
Yeah. Did you see that trailer or?
I actually, you know what? I didn't see the trailer, but I don't know why I haven't, because I like Star Wars, but
Mm.
I don't really know what the global feels on it are.
People like it. I mean, even people who didn't like The Last Jedi, they really like this one. I personally, I it doesn't really show a lot to me, so I'm kind of, it's uh kind of piqued my interest a little bit, but I don't really know any. It's like The Force Awakens, like that first trailer, which was very kind of vague. It's very similar. Um, so I'll let you see it for yourself. I'm not going to spoil the trailer for you, but it is like a very kind of vague setup, and you should watch it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well,
Mm, yeah.
is it? Do we know when it's coming out?
December 20th, the same Christmas kind of.
Oh, this year.
Yeah,
Okay.
this year. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We got Endgame, and then we got
Oh,
yeah, I know.
spoilers abound everywhere.
I know. For
It's like a
Endgame,
minefield.
I'm gonna talk about
Even
Endgame.
like
Yeah.
Even, I mean, obviously, there's like, it's like nerd culture, like this type of movie and stuff. So even going through my news feed of games, it's like, do you want to know this and that thing? And here's this here on that thing. It's like, please,
I
please
know.
spare me.
I
Though
mean,
usually people are pretty good about like putting a massive like the word spoiler in like the thumbnail of stuff. So it's like, okay, thank you. I
right.
can scroll over this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like they're pretty good with that. I think like IGN's been doing a good job like with their coverage of Endgame and Kotaku and whatever. Like the mainstream media nerd media outlets. I haven't really been looking at the movie ones like Screen Junkie or whatever. But yeah, I think for the most part like comicbook.com and all of them, they're doing pretty well with that because the not the game the movie is really dense, like really, really dense. And to not reveal at least like one or two small details about it, it's very hard. And I'm really proud of, I'm very proud of this community. I know it's a meme, right? I'm very proud of this community for not spoiling Endgame because truly that's really a feat. This movie is there we go with the game thing again. This movie is really dense and yeah,
I mean, it's also 3 hours, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. That contributes to the whole it being dense thing because man, so much happens. Yeah, I won't say more because it's very hard not to say anything.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's also like this has been like a lead up for like 10 years or something. So
Yeah,
it's like more, like in a way, more sensitive than normal. 'Cause,
yeah.
with a normal movie, it's like, oh well. I mean, still don't spoil it for me, but
Mm-hmm.
this has been like building up to something for a decade. You better not spoil this to me at
Right.
this point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like there are people. I'm not gonna say anything. I I'm not I'm not gonna say anything because I was gonna no I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to allude to anything or anything. I'm telling you, dude. Like this is one really dense film. Again, I'm gonna keep using that word. Like this is a really really impactful film, and like it's just there are so many nuggets of gold in this movie that will make you really like that will make you cry just not out of like not out of like sadness but just like out of pure joy, just because you're getting these things that you never thought you'd get, and it boggles my mind that that they did what they did because wow, just wow. Anyway,
Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
yeah, yeah, definitely go see it. Anyone listening to this podcast, go see that goddamn movie. It's really good. Even if you've only seen like a couple of MCU movies, like wow, like just see this movie because it's worth it. It's worth every penny, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Maybe not if you're looking to buy like a scalped ticket, which was a thing, I think.
Oh, really?
Like I think so. People would, because like it's sold out
Right,
tickets. So people would, I think we're selling theirs for like hundreds of dollars, as people do,
right,
as people do.
right.
It's probably not worth that much,
On opening night,
but
no, it's probably not. No, it's not worth that much money. But that's not to say that the movie is bad. It like
it's the cost of a normal movie.
yeah,
That's pretty
exactly.
reasonable. Not like
Hmm.
month's rent.
Right. It's not worth hundreds of dollars. Here, I should say this. In New York City, ticket prices are ridiculously expensive. They're like $20 a pop, So like
Yeah.
uh it's worth that. It's worth $20 to me. And it may not be worth. If you live in San Francisco, I there's no doubt in my mind that it's even more expensive over there. But I can assure you, within that, like, if you want to splurge a little bit, take your significant other out to see the movie, spend $50. You know, it's worth that. You get a couple drinks, a hot dog, some popcorn, a big bucket of popcorn. It's 3 hours. It's worth that. So, yeah, it's a good movie for a night out with your significant other or your friend or whatever. Anyway, let's end our Endgame talk here because I'm really like
You just,
teetering on the
you're just
edge
gonna
here.
accidentally be like,
And
they're all
then,
dead. Oh, frick.
yeah, I know.
I said it. I said the thing.
Yeah, I'm really
Dang
teetering
it.
on the edge, and I'm really bad at that type of stuff. Let's move into news of the week. Before we go, jump back to the past. Let's explore the present. Tim, I know this week has been kind of about video game news. I have a news piece. I'll just spout my news piece, and then we can move on to the topic of the show.
All right. Sounds good.
So there was a bit of Persona 5 news that came out this week, or just Persona in general, I should say. So Persona 5 The Royal, I believe it was announced 2 weeks ago, but this past week we actually got more information about the game, including like details about the new character's name. There's going to be like a new what do they call it, like confidant character there, and I think there's going to be a third semester. I love Persona 5. I think it's one of the greatest RPGs of this past console generation. And I'm really excited for this. My only worry about this game is that it's going to be priced at $60, and I don't want to be paying that much money. I want to be paying like maybe a good 10, 15, maybe even 20 for it, like as an add-on to Persona 5. I don't know. So I'm gonna lay this out for you, Tim, and then you let me know if it's worth $60. So the game's obviously it's gonna include the base game, right? So which is Persona 5. Then it's gonna include Persona, a new character, a new like Phantom Thieves character, and she's gonna be playable. She's gonna have her own persona, whatever, which is cool. She looks a lot like the protagonist, but she has like red hair, and it's cool. It's cool. There's gonna be a new district to explore in Tokyo, because this is set in Tokyo. There's gonna be a new confidant, which is like a new kind of side character that you can romance and whatever. Well, I don't think you can romance him, but a new character that you can interact with. There's gonna be a new scenario, I suppose, because it's gonna be like I guess it's gonna be like a post game scenario. It's gonna be like a third semester type of thing, because the main game takes place over 2 semesters, so I guess it's gonna be some kind of resolution or something like that. And I think that's it. But and there's gonna be some new vocal tracks, some new music tracks, and stuff like that. So do you think that content justifies $16, or is it just like an add-on type of thing?
I mean, you said it includes the game
Yeah,
as
it
well.
includes the base game. Yeah.
Has How long is it's Persona 5, you said?
Yeah, Persona 5 released. I don't know. When did it release? 2017, I want to say, or 2016. I'm looking it up right now.
Mhm.
2016 for in Japan.
Okay.
2017 here in the States.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So is the game on its own usually $60?
It was at release. Nowadays it's like 30 or 40.
Right.
It's $20
So
right
are
now
you going?
on Best Buy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
So are you like going off of that? Like, oh, it's $20, and then
Yeah,
if
kind
you're adding
of.
this stuff, maybe it's like 30.
Yeah.
Because I can see that. I guess as you were saying, I was thinking, well, like if it didn't include the game, then yeah, sure, like that'd be a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if it also included the game, I was thinking like, oh, maybe that feels more reasonable to ask that. But I guess also in the frame of mind of it being so much less these days, I can see I can see that perspective of like, why is this so much more money again?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Right. I mean, especially
Yeah,
for fans of, who've played this game religiously since it released here 2 years ago. It's kind of like, really? Like, I gotta pay that much just to play it? I don't know. It just feels kind of like a bad
yeah, that
business
makes
move.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. In other Persona news, they also released Atlas. I mean, they also announced I think it's called Persona 5S or Persona 5 Scramble, which everyone thought, because it was Persona 5S, everyone thought it was going to be Persona 5 for Switch, right? Because
Oh,
Joker's in
yeah,
Smash and et cetera, et cetera. So they thought
right.
it was going to be a port to Switch, but lo and behold, it's not. It's Persona 5 Scramble, and it's actually one of those Dynasty Warrior type games where you're defeating like hordes of enemies and et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm talking about, right, Tim?
Hmm. Yeah, it
Yeah.
actually sounded like a like a puzzle game to me,
It does,
like
right?
I don't know, like word scramble or something.
Yeah.
But
It makes you
all right.
think like that. Yeah. I think Persona, because now they got so many. Persona 5 oh no, it's called Persona Q2 New Cinema Labyrinth. That's going to be more like incorporate more puzzle elements, I think. And that's like a 3DS game. That's coming out later this year. So I think they got that genre covered there. So now they got like the Dynasty Warrior action genre covered with Scramble. They got the straight up JRPG thing with the main game, and now they have the puzzle thing. They're covering a lot of genres there with one property. So good for them. I'm not excited for Scramble at all. Do you usually play Dynasty Warrior games, Tim?
No,
Yeah.
I've seen them. I've seen like the Zelda one they did.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that it really appeals to me, but
Yeah.
I also haven't really given it a fair shot either.
Yeah, they're becoming a lot more popular here in the States, and I, because they made the Hyrule Warriors one, and then they made
Mm-hmm.
the Fire Emblem one, Fire Emblem. I forgot what it's called, but they made the Fire Emblem one too, and I played the Fire Emblem one actually. It, I'm with you. I'm in the same boat. Like it isn't doesn't really appeal to me very much. It feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see how there's an audience for it because it is like you're really like killing like all these goons at once, and it's kind of like a spectacle. It's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah,
But outside of that, I don't really. It doesn't appeal to me. It's a very niche genre. I feel so. Yeah, but it's good enough for them to make a Persona 5 uh, spin off. So, good for them. Good for Koei Tecmo because they're the ones who do it. Let's move on to the topic of the show. This week is all about Final Fantasy VI, which originally released for the Super Famicom, the SNES, on April 2nd, 1994. In case you don't know, Final Fantasy VI is the third entry. I think we mentioned before, it's the third entry here in the States, but it is actually the sixth entry in Japan. And it is the first game in the series that was produced and that was actually produced outside of his name. I forgot the pronunciation of his name. Hironobu Sakaguchi. I probably really butchered that. I'm sorry, but this was instead fulfilled by Kitase and Ito, who done I think most other games outside of six. Uh, Sakaguchi did the original five, and it's one of the first games in the series that kind of moved away from the medieval setting because from one to five, it was very much like kind of like Dragon Quest, where it's very there aren't a lot of sci-fi elements. They're not. It's not steampunk per se. It is very um, a very typical RPG in that way. Like there are mages, there are soldiers. Like there are very stereotypical classes, like RPG classes. And this game kind of changes that around a little bit. There's still like your stereotypical classes here, but it feels more like amalgamation of those stereotypes where your characters. And we'll dive into the gameplay more in depth later, but we'll get more in depth about it later. But you can kind of teach all of your characters magic spells and stuff like that. Each one can kind of fulfill multiple roles in that sense. Whereas back in the day, it was still that way, but they kind of felt more like one and the same. Here, it feels more distinct. Like they have their own magic attacks, they have their own spells, and etc. etc. And their own specials and whatever. This is perhaps one of the best critically acclaimed RPGs of all time. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. I wrote a piece about it actually not too long ago, earlier this month, on Game Revolution. You should check it out, about its best moments so far. This is something that it really is a sweeping epic. It tells the tale. It tells it from the perspective of 14 different protagonists. Terra, Locke. It's mostly Terra, Locke, and Celeste. Is that how you pronounce her name? Celeste, right? I never figured it out.
Yeah,
Celeste.
Celes.
Yeah, Celeste. And it's kind of like set in, without giving too much away, although we will have to dive into the story more in depth later. It's kind of set during this like second industrial revolution for the world of, what was it? What were they referred to? The world of balance. It's called, and it kind of tells a tale of how they're trying. Like there's this evil empire called the Gestalt Empire that's trying to harvest all this magical energy and combine it with the new tech that the Industrial Revolution is crafting, and kind of combine them together and create like this all-powerful army that rules the world. And that's really what the game mostly revolves around. But I think its characters get much more of the brunt of the focus here, because it really is a very character-driven game, and it really is about emotion at the end of the day. So without further ado, because I keep talking about this, I can talk about this game forever. Tim, what do you think of the game's presentation? First off, the original one presentation, not the mobile version, the one for SNES.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a mobile version.
There is, yeah, yeah.
It's pretty super detailed.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of, and it's a little, I don't know, it's like maybe little apples and oranges, but I was thinking of like Super Mario World,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of comparing the two,
That's interesting.
and like Super Mario World also it was for the SNES.
Yeah.
It came out in 1990, which I think Final Fantasy VI was 94, right?
94. Yeah.
So it was 4 years before. And just seeing like the difference is like really staggering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, it's kind of maybe not totally fair because, I mean, for one thing, Mario wasn't like I don't know that they were out to make things like super like high detailed and like
Right. Right.
realism. Plus, it was 4 years prior, but just seeing what the SNES was capable of was like it looks really good. Like even today,
Mm-hmm.
like it has one of those. I think it has one of those kind of timeless feels to it,
Yeah,
and just
I
really
agree with
really
you.
stands out.
I totally agree with you. I think it was ported to Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Advance or
Mm-hmm.
Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, yeah. And that I feel like it really feels right at home and on a handheld because of the sprites and um like when you blow it up on a screen, you could definitely like tell that it's a little aged because because it's sprites and the also this isn't so much the presentation but the gameplay. um it's a little slow, like it feels like a lot of the movements are slow, and that it's a product of the 90s, let's say. I wouldn't say it's a product of 1994. I do feel like this is not a 1990 like indicative of all the games of 1994, because it's not. It was way ahead of its time in many areas, but it is a product of the 90s in the sense that there are some technical details that feel a little laggard, I suppose. But it, the Game Boy Advance version really kind of remedied a lot of those stuff. Like, aside from the fact that the aspect ratio is smaller, so you kind of like it kind of pops out a little more. You could also, I think they introduced speed um, modifiers there, so you can actually speed up a little bit of the menus and stuff like that, like the in-game battle system menu, stuff like that. So I feel like there is a little bit more leeway. I mean, not leeway. It feels a lot more at home in modernity with the Game Boy Advance. But that being said, SNES still very good. Still a very good version, and it doesn't detract, I should say, from the experience at all. Oh, I do want to point out. I, I want to ask you this before I point this out. What
Okay.
scene in the game kind of stuck out to you, presentation wise? Because there are a lot, I think, that are really technically impressive. But is there any one that kind of like stuck out to you that was like, wow, that's pretty cool?
But you mean like just in terms of presentation in general
Yeah, in terms of
stuff?
presentation, because there are a couple that come to mind to me. I'm just curious to know, if you have any.
I don't know. Maybe just the detail in some of like the enemies you fight.
Mm. Okay.
But other than that, I can't. Nothing comes to mind for me.
Mm. I think
But yeah,
Kefka is one, the one with the enemy that you just mentioned.
yeah,
Kefka is pretty detailed because he's like a clown, right? He's the main antagonist of the game, and he's a clown, and he has all these kind of colors on him. And I feel like they really kind of played around with the color palette there, and it was pretty. I don't know. It's pretty entertaining to kind of see that on an SNES game or in a Final Fantasy game in general, where it was much more bland. Like I said before, it was medieval up until that point, so the color palette they didn't really do a lot there, but this is one that they really kind of experimented with. In terms of scenes that stuck out to me, there are two from a presentation standpoint that are really kind of I don't know, very impressive. The first scene is the very first scene, the introductory sequence where Terra is with the Empire, and they're kind of on these mechs, and Terra is being mind controlled. Terra is one of the three main protagonists. There are 14 really, but she's one of the three main ones, and she's being controlled by the Empire to kind of do their bidding. And she's like this all powerful. She's half human, half Esper, and Esper is like the magical beings of this world and of the world of balance. And she goes with the Empire, and they're like in this snowy tundra type of thing, and it's really cool because up until then, you had like this whole introductory sequence, which felt like a movie, and uh, it still feels like a movie, I should say. And you have like all of, like the credits kind of appear on the screen, like as you're doing kind of like a flyby. I don't know if you've seen this, Tim, but you're doing kind of like a flyby of like some of the areas in the game, like some of the villages and the hubs and stuff like that. And you see like people walking around and et cetera, et cetera. And it tells you a story about how 1,000 years ago there was this magi war, and a lot of the magic died, but somehow it's come back, and the empire is trying to harvest it, whatever, whatever. And it sets up the scene to the point where now you're Terra and you're working for the empire, and you're trying to get some of that magic for yourself and then harvest it. And it's just really cool to kind of see how it all culminates in that. And then, but that's just the beginning of the game, you know. And then you get to play from then on. And then the other scene that stuck out to me was the opera scene, the opera house. Are you familiar with that one? It's pretty famous.
It might be, but
Right.
explain what it is.
It's basically, so basically, not Terra. I think it's, is it Terra or Celeste? It might be Celeste. She has to double as a famous opera singer in order for them to convince a pirate to kidnap her, and then they're gonna get the. I don't. It's a very complicated situation. Then they're gonna get the pirate to like join their crew or whatever, whatever. The point is, that this is the point in time where, Celeste kind of like she becomes a human being, because up until that point she's very like she's a soldier, and she was working for the empire, but she's since become a rebel. And but she's still very like uh battle oriented. Forgot, bucolic, and not bucolic. What's the word I'm looking for? Belligerent. She's still very belligerent, and she wants to defeat like the empire. It changed from she wants to kill all the rebels to now she wants to kill the empire. And this is the point in time where she kind of discovers the concept of love and her feelings towards another character who I won't spoil. And the whole thing is told from a song, from the perspective of a song, and it also alludes to things that happen later in the game where, spoilers, but she tries to commit suicide, and the world is the world is destroyed, and it alludes to those points in time. It's very poetic and it's very sad, but it's also very human, and it's very touching and affecting. And the way that they kind of play with the colors there, because the introductory kind of scene in the opera scene is like this grand orchestra, and it's like it's all colorful, it's bright red, it's bright yellows, and it's very lots of movement. But then it cuts to Celeste singing on a balcony, and it's all very blue and black, and it's very solemn. And the contrast between the two is very distinct, and it really kind of affects you. It's very emotional. It's really, you have to see it to believe it, and play it. Don't just look it up on YouTube. Play the game, because it really truly is quite amazing. Moving on to the game's gameplay. What did you think of its gameplay, Tim? This is the more interesting aspect of it.
hmm Well, so initially I didn't know that there was, I think, even more than um, like 4 people you could have on your team. But then I was watching gameplay and was like, oh no, there are more. But then you mentioned there's like 14.
Yeah,
That's so many.
it's
And then
crazy,
it
right?
also, yeah, it kind of also just gets into the idea that there's a lot. It seems like there's a lot to this game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to see and explore and do. Um, And there's even like stuff you can do after, like you do the main like story and stuff. I think
Right.
there's a
Yeah.
lot here.
There's a post game. Yeah. It's a
Um,
lot. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, but I mean that's a good thing. I
Mhm.
mean that it was for some people because I'm sure it's an experience that many people enjoy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
just trying to think of some other things.
It, it's
Um,
it's it's about 40 hours, but uh, the thing about it is, again, this is kind of spoilery, but like it it appears as though it's gonna end around 15 hours, around halfway through, because Kefka gets arrested, and his whole plan was to kind of go to the floating continent. There's like this thing called the floating continent in the game, and if you play around with the floating continent, like I think it's like the statues on the floating continent. Basically, the continents. There are three continents in this world. The continents shift, and then the world of balance becomes the world of ruin. And his whole goal, he's basically a madman, and his whole goal was to create chaos. And he's arrested, but somehow he escapes being arrested. I forgot how. Um, and he achieves his goal. He wins because he's able to go to the floating continent, switch around the continents, and then, as you know, when continents shift, as I'm sure you know, Tim, when continents shift in the real world, it's catastrophe. It's utter catastrophe, and the world just was decimated after that. And Terra, Locke, and all the other ones, Sabine, and everyone else, like they're on like on a ship, and the ship just is completely destroyed. It's completely torn asunder, and the whole party, all 14 of you, are just scattered around the world because everything just went to shit. Basically, uh, getting to the gameplay, it revolves around these espers, as I mentioned before. I don't know how I was talking about the story. I'm sorry about that, but the game revolves around espers, and it revolves around the concept of like magitech and stuff like that, which is like magitech is, as its name indicates, it's magic and tech combined, and it does kind of, as I mentioned, as I was introducing the topic of the show, uh, there is a way for every character in the game to kind of um, uh, have magic spells and et cetera, but it doesn't. It's also similar to like Final Fantasy VII, where there are limit breaks and stuff like that, and overdrives and stuff. Overdrive, I think, is in 10. I don't remember. It does this in the sense where like every character has its own unique special attack, right? So you can have like the same magic attacks, but you also have your own specials too that makes it unique, and it differentiates itself from 1 to 5, because 1 to 5 was kind of like, especially like the early one, like 1 and 2, like you could just kind of teach everyone everything, and it was kind of like whatever. But here it's like each one has their own like ultima move. Each one has its own kind of, like Sabine could like, he could pick up like a train, and like he has like these awesome like suplex attacks, and he's very like physical based, and like Terra is very like magical based, and it's just so cool, how they incorporate the espers into the gameplay, and how the story itself is kind of tying all this together, is incorporated into the gameplay, because this overarching like magic and technology aspect. Like some characters are more technologically oriented, so they have more physical attacks. Some of them are just very plain, like Sabine, and like I mentioned, Sabine is just very like, you know, he just kind of punches things, and then Terra is much more magically based. So it's so cool to see how the story affects the gameplay so much. Putting the gameplay aside, I think this is something that is almost unequivocally true. Uh, The music here is just beautiful. Would you agree, Tim?
yes, I would agree.
I feel like Nobuo Uematsu, he was the composer for this. This is his masterpiece. This is his magnum opus because there are just each character's theme is just it's so like Celeste's theme is just so beautiful in the sense that there's something like a longing there. There's a sadness and a longing, and it ultimately there's a tinge of also happiness. Oh, it's so beautiful. Kafka's theme is so menacing. It's not as menacing, I don't think, as like Sephiroth's, like One Winged Angel, which is very,
Yeah,
like dun dun. Dun. I even now I'm just thinking about it. It's like one of the
I
greatest.
mean, it
Yeah.
even has his name in it.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
can't get more terrifying than that.
Exactly.
I'm just screaming my name at you in song.
Yeah. 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 Like the chorus just goes Sephiroth, and it's just
Da
like
da 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 da.
I know. Oh, it's so cool, right? But that's very that theme is very what's the word here? It just transcends every transcending. There you go. That's the word. It transcends everything. Like all popular culture. I think has heard of that theme, and it's just wow. Kefka's theme, unfortunately, I don't think is as uh, noteworthy or as popularly known, but it is very kind of cool in the sense that it's kind of tinged with this whimsical note to it because Kefka is like he's a madman and he's doing this just because he loves chaos and he loves to see people suffer. He's a sadistic bastard, and he's an asshole, and he's really just his primary motivation is just to see everyone suffer, and he isn't like Sephiroth, who's kind of like he's like angsty. I don't mean that in a bad way, but Sephiroth. Would you agree, Tim? Like Sephiroth is kind of like an angsty character.
I have not had much exposure to him
Okay.
as a
Okay.
character, so I'm not a good source of knowing that. I
Right.
guess.
Well, basically, Sephiroth. He's basically like this genetically enhanced soldier, and like his mom he has like mommy problems basically, and like I don't know, it's very complicated. He's kind of like Terra in the sense that he's special. Like he's kind of like he's not an esper, that's not the word that they use in the game, but he's magically enhanced, and he's also a super soldier and whatever. So he's kind of like he's kind of a dick. He thinks he's like self-righteous and a little bit like that way, but Kefka isn't. He isn't so much self-righteous in the sense that he just wants to see the world burn. He's very much like the Joker in that sense, where I don't know, they don't their motivation is just to see things crumble. Like they love to see things just go to shit, and yeah, it's beautiful in that sense. It's because it's poetic in the sense that it's kind of like they have these main characters, these villains, like in Final Fantasy 15 or whatever, who they're kind of redeeming themselves, or they're trying to like get power or whatever, which is okay, whatever. But here it's just like, nah, like he just wants to kill everybody. He just hates everybody. He has like mental. I guess they allude to him having like some kind of mental problems or something, and that's really why he wants to do this. Um, so yeah, he just wants to commit genocide, and it's sad in that way. But it's also
Mm-hmm.
the way that they portray it through their music is whimsy. I don't know. You have to hear it. You have to hear it, and you have to see it for yourself because there's a lot of way to interpret it. Um. Anyway, before I completely take over this Final Fantasy VI, and I apologize to everyone who's listening because I really love this game. Tim, what do you think
Well,
of?
I mean,
Yeah,
you have like much more knowledge about this than I do,
right,
and a lot
right.
more attachment. So I'm I'm glad for you to be able to express how you feel about it because I am much less educated on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I apologize if I am talking too much to listeners and to you too, Tim. If I'm not giving you enough time to talk, it's just this game is this was a game that I played before seven, and this was the game that I was like, wow, like this is what games could do. Like like it was one of the games that really kind of made me fall in love with RPGs in general. And to me, it's one of the best, if not the best RPG. I think I mentioned this at the very beginning of the podcast. It's one of the best RPGs of all time. So yeah, but you know what I think of it, Tim. What do you think of it based on your knowledge of the game?
I've never played a Final Fantasy game,
Mm.
and I have. It's one of those things where I'll see like that opening scene with the mechs and they're walking to that town, or like the victory fanfare. Like I've seen that stuff around, so
Mm-hmm.
when I came across, I was like, oh, that thing. Yeah, I know that thing. I've been exposed to it, and it's obviously very iconic. And
Yeah.
seeing this, it does make me want to at least try it. Um, it does seem like there's a lot, but I feel like I'd be willing to undergo that.
Yeah.
Um, I guess maybe one thing is it's actually it's maybe not as bad as in some other games, but I in terms of like the combat,
Uh huh.
sometimes it feels maybe a little static
Hmm.
in a way,
Yeah.
because like sometimes, not all the time, but like sometimes, like I think it's more with the enemies, like they'll attack, but like they don't really like move around. They're just kind of like they did a thing, and then like I don't know, like claw effects come over your character, and then they take damage.
Yeah.
But I kind of like, so for one thing, is that accurate? Like the enemies don't really
Yeah.
move around because your characters they kind of like jump around and do like animations, right?
Right. Right. When they're performing, like the thing that comes to mind is how Sabine suplexes the train, because there's a train boss in this game, and you could suplex the train. It's just so ridiculous. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's pretty.
They are like they are more expressive than the actual um, villains or the enemy, the goons or whatever you want to call them, the protagonists, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I I think in a way that is like a small turnoff for me because I was trying to think of like other RPGs like turn-based RPGs like even Paper Mario. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty apples and oranges there, but just seeing like you do a thing and then that's like animated and you go up and like attack and then the enemy does the same. I
Mm-hmm.
think I there's less of a disconnect in what's happening for me.
Right.
I like seeing it all come together better. But um, and I guess I don't know, that kind of disconnect like makes the process seem like tedious in a way. I don't know that I know how to explain what I'm trying to
I
say,
think
but
it takes you
it
out of the
just it
action.
yeah,
Is that what you're trying to
I think a
say?
little bit. It
Yeah.
takes me out a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I I don't think that's enough to make me not want to play it. Actually, on a somewhat well to do with the combat.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is one of those games where you do like hundreds and hundreds of points of damage,
Yeah.
whereas like with other RPGs it's like less inflated. Like going back to Paper Mario, doing like even 10 damage is a lot,
Oh, really?
whereas in like Final Fantasy it's like that. I mean that's pitiful.
Yeah.
Like unless you do like I don't know. I don't know the scale for that, but
Well, I think for
what
Final
like what's
Fantasy games, that's like 10 is pitiful for anything in a Final Fantasy game. I think that's
yeah.
remained consistent throughout the series. I think like even like low hundreds is not very a lot of damage. I think like maybe in Final Fantasy 15 is where they started to kind of scale the damage counter a little more. But I think here I think this is the game where you could do up to 9,000. No, that's Final Fantasy 8. Sorry. But you could do like thousands of damage I think in this game. Uh
Yeah.
I don't know what the maximum is, but you could do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Um and just kind of thinking about that, like in a way, it almost seems like it's just it's like oh yeah, you got like 2,000 health, and like you just this thing does like a couple hundred damage, but that's not a lot. You really need to be doing like 1,000 damage. It's like
Mhm.
so much. It's almost like ridiculous. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, does do you have any like thoughts on that? Because like I can see how maybe like to think that like your enemy has like thousands and thousands of health maybe makes it a bit like a little more imposing,
Yeah, like it's
like
intimidating a little bit.
more of like
Yeah.
this like it is ridiculous. Like this is a ridiculous like sort of challenge, like almost like otherworldly, which I mean it's meant to
Yeah.
be in some cases.
You know, I think, and I don't mean to shame you or anything, Tim, but I think because I come from a space where, or my knowledge is, I have a lot of knowledge of RPGs. I think, um, I think that it isn't very surprising to me. If anything, it's very normal to me because, um, like I said, like I'm used to dealing with bosses and stuff like that that have, they have like the gigantic health bar on the top of the screen, but then there's like three under that, so you have to defeat one health bar, and then you have to get to the other one, and you have to get to the other one. I'm very
Yeah,
used to that. It's like Devil May Cry, where you have to like defeat five or six health bars in order to defeat the boss overall, or like Kingdom Hearts or whatever. Uh, Kingdom Hearts is an RPG. Sorry, like again, like it's something that's very indicative of RPGs in general. It's just like there are multiple health bars, like ridiculous kind of hit points for enemies, and the thing is I've started to see this more in action games, like action oriented, even MMOs. MMOs, that's not a good example, but even like action oriented games like Borderlands, or uh, the one that comes to mind is Destiny. How it's they have enemies with very large damage counters, and that's not really an RPG. That's more like I don't know. What was the term that you used for Anthem, Tim? Like semi MMO or something like that?
it's like a Destiny esque like um, third persony lootery,
Yeah,
sometimes play with other people thing.
yeah, yeah. It's like a MMO esque type of game, and I feel like those types of games, those are modern games, and like they incorporate these RPG elements where the characters have have large hit point count, health, have a lot of health. I was really struggling to come up with that. Have a lot of health, and you have to kind of like whittle them down. Uh,
Right.
yeah. So
No, yeah.
I feel
I
like back back then in the day, like you had those genres that it was much more of a distinct. Like you had like RPGs where you had the large damage counters and you had the high health bars, but then you also had games where it like platformers and action games where it was very small. But now like those two roads are kind of crossing, and they're becoming one. So it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, you were saying, Tim. Sorry.
it's right. Like things like Destiny or yeah, even Borderlands. They do have like bullet spongy bosses and whatnot. But
There you go. That's the term. Bullet
I
sponge.
guess like seeing your characters like just there's a big old number, and it's just right there, and it's just like
Hmm.
you have like 2,000 health. I mean, I don't know. There's just something I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know like what my point is at this point.
There's something a bit
It
ridiculous
just
about it. Yeah.
like somehow like in Borderlands you can get thousands of health, but it doesn't feel the same for some
Uh,
reason.
I see.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Again,
It was just
mhm.
yeah.
I think it's a matter of perspective. I really do. I think it's because you come from a more of I'm assuming a more of like action adventure type games, right? Or shooters.
Um, partially. Yeah. I mean, I guess I haven't done like too much of like this type of RPG.
Mm-hmm. Right. I because let me put it this way. Because you come from a place where you don't play a lot of RPGs, um, it may be something that's novel, to you. But because like someplace I come from with RPGs, I'm very used to like having enemies just they have like these attacks that have like 3,000 damage and then I'm gone. My enemy has only 2,000 hit points, and I'm very used to like the math in that. Um, uh, it's something that you just kind of grow accustomed to with the genre. So, maybe you didn't grow up with it, or maybe you're not very accustomed to it, and that's why it might seem a little more striking to you. But to me, what is striking to me is the fact that these shooter games and stuff like that are incorporating these mathematical kind of elements into them. Because I thought that action games were supposed to be all about the action, like I didn't think they were supposed to be numbers and math involved, but they are, and it is mainstream now. So that's what's surprising to me is that this RPG kind of mentality has kind of trickled down to the mainstream, and yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I like it. I like how everything's kind of melding together and we're having new genres appear. It's cool. All right. So, any last thoughts on Final Fantasy 16, Tim, before we wrap it up?
I definitely want to try it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I kind of forgot and or didn't realize that this was like such a landmark thing
Mm-hmm.
for like for so many people. I guess for gaming in general, but it seems like there's a lot to unpack.
There
It
is.
seems like there's a lot to see and experience and to love about it. So
Yeah. I
that's about it.
I I definitely recommend that you play this game because it is a game that even if I know that you're a little wary of like the damage counter thing and stuff like that, and that will take some time to get used to. I gonna make that clear now, but the game's story is just so excellent, and their characters are so excellent that it's worth it. It really is, and I hope I didn't spoil it too much for you, Tim, because the characters alone are like I didn't
Oh,
even I.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know how it ends
Oh,
and
okay,
stuff.
okay. Like I didn't even get into like the other characters like I think his name is Cyan. I forgot his name, but there's another character who's it's very personal and it's very like wow, like this guy's been through a lot, and you're gonna find yourself saying that for a lot of characters, like with Final Fantasy 15. One of one of my biggest complaints about that game is that like I don't give a shit about Noctis. I don't really give a shit about like Ignis and like all these like retarded brother, like his companions. I don't give a shit about them. Like I don't care. It's like and it's like the story is all over the place. This is a game where they really Final Fantasy 6 really perfected this, where it's very the characters are those stars of the show as they should be. It's not so the world too is super interesting It's very cool, but I feel like it's even that is like uh, a shadow to it serves as a shadow. It's just a backdrop to the the character portrayals and the moving portraits of all of these beautiful, protagonists who deserve a remake. I I don't know why Square Enix hasn't shown this game more love because it's amazing. It I feel like of all the games that Square Enix should kind of remake, it isn't Final Fantasy VII. I mean, it's a great game, whatever. Uh, it's Final Fantasy VII. Everybody knows what it is. Final Fantasy VIII deserves a remaster because I don't know why the hell Square Enix doesn't give a shit about that game. And then after 8, they need to do 6 because that's the game that kind of was like, holy shit! Like, this is Final Fantasy. This is where Final Fantasy finds its identity. This is where the steampunk thing comes into play. This is where like the character development comes into play, the world building comes into play, the villains come into play, everything. The cinematic presentation comes into play, and it is the precursor to Final Fantasy VII, which was kind of like the blockbuster hit of the franchise that everybody knows about. This is the blockbuster hit that only some people know about, that more people deserve to play. So, without further ado, finish listening to this podcast, go play Final Fantasy VI, and have a ball because it is incredible. It is the best RPG of all time. That about wraps up for our impressions of Final Fantasy VI. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to be talking about Ape Escape, which is a complete a complete departure from like the very dramatic sensibilities of Final Fantasy VI. Have you ever played Ape Escape, Tim?
Nope. But I know of it, and that it presumably involves apes that are escaping in some way.
Yeah, pretty much. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's celebrating. We're gonna go through May games next week, and it's celebrating. I believe it's 20th anniversary. So that'll be fun. That'll be a nice throwback for me because that was one of the first games I ever played. One of the first platformers I ever played on the original PlayStation. That's gonna be fun. So join us next week for Ape Escape. All right. So, what are we going to be playing next week? Tim, what are you going to be playing this upcoming week?
I don't know. Probably not too much, but I might play a little Minecraft, possibly.
Oh yeah.
There was a new update a few days ago. They added foxes, which are adorable, added pandas, which are equally adorable. They added bamboo forests. There's now, the big thing, of course, is, there's villages that you can find, but I mean, that's been a thing for years, as well as like these villagers. I don't know how well versed you are on
No, I know
what's in the
nothing.
game at this point. Okay. Well, there's been villages and villagers for like actually I think like 8 years now.
Wow.
Right, freaking long time. But now there's raids that can happen where these like sort of antagonistic like anti-villagers can like come and attack. They have like crossbows and there's witches and these big animal beast things that come attack, and
Wow.
you can like defend the village, and it's just basically an event you can do and stuff. I think there's some new there's some new blocks and a new biome, and yep,
Very
that's
cool.
cool stuff. Interesting.
It sounds a lot like what was that? That Stardew Valley type of thing. Is that any does is that comparison fair, or is it completely out of left field?
Uh, it's a little bit out of left field.
Okay, never mind.
um, Only just have you played Stardew Valley?
No, but I know that it's like villagers and like people attack you and right. I don't know.
Uh, well, people don't attack you in Stardew Valley.
Oh.
There's a cave you can go in and like fight creatures, but that's like a separate thing to the town. Plus,
Oh.
there's like, I mean, the whole thing with Stardew is like farming and stuff.
Right.
Which I mean, you can do farming in Minecraft, but that's not like a focus. I mean, you could
Right.
make it a focus if you want to, but
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Uh. Okay. So I'm completely. I don't know the hell I'm talking about, obviously. But I am very excited to hear that pandas are coming to Minecraft.
yeah.
And I will leave it at that. uh, as for me, what I will be playing for the upcoming week, I don't think I'll be playing anything. I will watch the season premiere. Season premiere? Yeah, the season premiere of Attack on Titan. Oh my god, I'm so excited because it's getting to an arc where a lot of people die, and okay. And I know a lot of people are like very they don't like Attack on Titan because it's Attack on Titan, and a lot of very anime tropes and stuff are found inside of it. Whatever. I like Attack on Titan. I'm excited. I'm happy. So give me my happiness, and then I'll probably watch Endgame again because Jesus Christ, what a great movie. And I don't mean to talk about this movie again, but Jesus Christ, it's really good. And I'm sorry for taking Jesus' name in vain. I'm sorry, Jesus. But
No, he appears in the movie. That's how
he
they
actually
win.
does. He does, and I won't spoil it, but I actually did spoil it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. It has to do with the Infinity Stones. Thanos just snaps, and Jesus comes back from the dead. I'm so sorry.
Stop messing with the universe. I'll snap you.
I really have to stop talking
Thanos is
about
like,
religion because
oh.
people are gonna, people are really gonna, they're gonna flag our podcast.
Yeah, maybe not.
um, yeah. So I'm probably gonna watch Endgame again, and yeah, I'm gonna have a good time watching both of those things. All right, so that about wraps it up for this episode of the Time Hop Podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm your host, David Lozada. Again, you find me on Twitter at XenoCreator125. You find Tim on King Gamer writing articles as usual. Check out King Gamer, by the way. We recently got an overhaul. Looks really nice. It's very intuitive. The website design. You like it too, right, Tim?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's dope.
Yeah, it's dope. It's pretty cool. So check us out on King Gamer, writing articles as usual. Join us next week as we discuss Ape Escape, which is celebrating, I believe, its 20th anniversary, PlayStation Classic. Thank you for joining us again, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Goodbye.